What if the most famous blonde in Hollywood secretly believed that everything was meaningless? This isn't a tabloid fantasy. It's Ecclesiastes in high heels. It's Vanity wrapped in velvet. It's Marilyn Monroe and the Book of Existential Dread. Because behind the red lipstick and platinum curls was a woman who read poetry late at night, who underlined the word vanity in a hotel room Bible, who whispered Ecclesiastes not to an audience, but to herself. This isn't a story about a starlet who found Jesus. It's a story about a woman who wrestled with the same verse that has haunted philosophers for 2,000 years. Vanity of vanities, saith the preacher, vanity of vanities, all is vanity. So what happens when a woman worshipped for her beauty stares into a mirror and sees the abyss staring back? Let's begin. Marilyn wasn't born Marilyn. She was born Norma Jean Mortensen in 1926 to a troubled mother and no stable father. Her childhood wasn't glittering. It was fragmented, foster homes, orphanages, and long stretches of feeling disposable. As a girl, she attended church sporadically, more for structure than salvation. But she was fascinated by scripture. In one of her earliest notebooks, found years after her death, she copied down verses from the Psalms and Ecclesiastes. Underneath one line, "To everything there is a season," she scribbled in the margin,
"Why not now?"
The question of timing, of purpose, of futility, these were not academic for her. They were embedded in her DNA. Ecclesiastes isn't the Bible's feel-good book. It's the book that opens with despair and closes with a sigh. It's the preacher, maybe Solomon, maybe not, standing on a rooftop, looking down at everything he's built and saying, it was smoke, it was chasing wind. And yet, Ecclesiastes became Monroe's quiet companion. One of her most annotated books, found in her personal library, was The Prophet by Khalil Gibran, filled with biblical rhythm, grief, and longing. On the inside jacket, she wrote a list.
Emptiness, hunger, search, silence.
Words that could have come from any chapter of Ecclesiastes, but there's more. Marilyn Monroe owned over 400 books. Not the books her publicist told her to hold for photos. Real books, poetry, politics, Russian literature, Freud, Camus. A well-worn Bible. She had marked Ecclesiastes 1:8. All things are full of weariness. A man cannot utter it, with a red underline. One biographer claimed she quoted it after a late-night shoot, collapsing into a chair.
Nothing satisfies. You do all this, and for what?
That's Ecclesiastes 2:11. Then I considered all that my hands had done, and the toil I had expended in doing it, and behold, all was vanity and a striving after wind. Fame was her prison, and she knew it. She once said,
Fame doesn't fulfill you. It warms you a bit, but that warmth is temporary.
Compare that to Ecclesiastes 5:10. He who loves money will not be satisfied with money, nor he who loves wealth with his income. This also is vanity. Monroe had both, and neither filled the void. She was married 3 times, loved many, trusted few. In a taped interview, she confessed,
I don't understand why I've always felt like I'm pretending, like I'm watching someone else live my life.
That echoes Ecclesiastes 1:14. I have seen everything that is done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity and a striving after wind. Even love, the one thing that seemed real, was filtered through Ecclesiastes in her mind. Death haunted her, not in a morbid Gothic way, but as a question, an inevitability. In a letter to her acting coach, she wrote,
People talk about legacy, about being remembered, but they forget the forgetting. You live, then you vanish.
Ecclesiastes 9:5. For the living know that they will die, but the dead know nothing, and they have no more reward, for the memory of them is forgotten. She wasn't being dramatic. She was being scriptural, but Ecclesiastes doesn't leave you there. It's not nihilism, it's realism. The preacher says, eat your bread with joy, love your spouse, enjoy your work. Marilyn clung to that part too. She once said,
If I can make someone laugh, or feel less alone for 5 minutes, then I've done something.
That's Ecclesiastes 3:12-13. I perceive that there is nothing better for them than to be joyful and to do good as long as they live. Also that everyone should eat and drink and take pleasure in all his toil. This is God's gift to man. She wasn't quoting it. She was living it, or trying to. In her photos, her films, her interviews, you see both sides. The glitter and the grave, the smile and the sigh, Ecclesiastes in a white dress. Marilyn Monroe was not a theologian, but she understood that the most ancient questions, what's the point? Why am I here? Why do I feel so empty when I have so much? Are also the most human. She carried them in her purse, in her poems, in her Bible. And that's why Ecclesiastes mattered to her, because it didn't pretend, it didn't lie, it named the void, and dared to find beauty anyway. Let's open her private writings. In one poem scribbled on hotel stationery, she wrote,
I sit in my room with silence like a bruise. The world asks for my smile, but I have lost my shoes.
There's no chapter or verse here, but there's Ecclesiastes, a weariness under the glitter, a dissonance between public joy and private emptiness. Another scrap reads,
The camera sees only what I give, but I am more than the angle of my chin.
Again, it's not scripture, but it echoes the preacher's lament. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. Ecclesiastes 1:8. She lived in a world where seeing was everything, but being was elusive. Ecclesiastes teaches us to see beauty in fragility. Marilyn embodied that contradiction. She was stunning and broken, glowing and grieving, desired and disposable. And in that fragile contradiction, she became more than a celebrity. She became a symbol of the human condition. She once said,
I restore myself when I'm alone.
That too is Ecclesiastes, not in doctrine, but in spirit. In the summer of 1962, Marilyn was found dead in her Brentwood home. Officially ruled a suicide. Unofficially, still debated. But her nightstand held more than pills and mystery. It held notes, fragments, her Bible, open to Ecclesiastes. One note read simply,
I am not afraid of being alone. I am afraid of being misunderstood.
Another, scribbled in a personal notebook,
Time is kind, but only to strangers. God, if you are listening, I am listening too.
It's hard to say what she believed in the end, but it's clear she was still listening, still wrestling. The world saw a goddess. She saw herself as dust and breath. Ecclesiastes 3:20. All go unto one place, all are of the dust, and all turn to dust again. She once wrote to a friend,
I sometimes think the universe has a cruel sense of humor. But then I remember, it gave us trees, didn't it?
It sounds like a throwaway line, but maybe not. Ecclesiastes 11:7-8. Light is sweet, and it is pleasant for the eyes to see the sun. So if a person lives many years, let him rejoice in them all. Maybe she didn't find all the answers, but maybe she was learning to love the light. She never escaped the mirror. Not really. It followed her from dressing room to hospital room, from magazine covers to headlines. But in the margins of scripture and the corners of poems, she was more than a reflection. She was real. Ecclesiastes says everything is vanity, but it also says hold joy when you find it. Eat, drink, love, be honest about sorrow, be gentle with time. That's what Marilyn tried to do. And if you listen closely, you can still hear her whisper it back.
All is vanity, but not without beauty.
If stories like this, where ancient words find unexpected echoes, speak to you, subscribe for more. We're just getting started.